welcome back. It's not 2024, it is 2025. If we haven't told you, Happy New Year from us on Horror Fiends TV, but more importantly, on What's Your Story. So before I continue, here is the fourth corner herself, Lexi, who I know she's dying to talk about this. Hmm, that explains it because this film,
Right.
but yeah.
Like, what
so,
the fuck?
yeah, so how you
Um,
doing, Lexi?
I'm good. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Horror Fiends. I'm glad to talk about this one. I that was a perfect intro because like this one is a what the fuck type of film, and I'm ready to dive into this one because and just forewarned for people that are watching, you might want to watch this more than once. And I made the massive mistake of just watching it once. So yeah, watch it more than once, then come watch this review.
And I'll tell you this right now, the name of the movie is another part of the twist of it because I went into this film totally thinking something else. And then when everything unraveled, I'm like, holy shit, what the hell did I just watch? Not in a bad way, but we'll talk about it, a little bit more. So we're going to be talking about Cuckoo 2024, written and directed by Tillman Singer. Now, this film is basically about this girl, 17-year-old Gretchen, who's played by Hunter Schafer, who, if you watch the show Euphoria, she's on Euphoria, but she was also in Hunger Games. So she travels from the United States to the German Alps to stay with her father, stepmother, and a very strange sister, basically in these Alps where things begin to unravel. And I would say feathers begin to get plucked because this film has such a dynamic storytelling aspect of it. And it kind of like, I'll be honest, I agree. If you watch this film, give yourself a second watch because I actually gave myself, I would say a first watch, but I kind of went back and cut through a couple of things just to try to understand exactly what happened. And even then, I feel like I need a third watch of this film. But in What's Your Story, we always two things: we're story driven and character driven. So a lot of the films we've done do have strong characters in these films. So in this one in particular, Gretchen, 17 years old, she goes to with her father, and you could already tell there's a lot of tensions there in this. But Lexi, like, I know you love characters as well. I mean, what do you think about Gretchen? But also, what do you think about her relationship with her father, stepmother, and Alba?
So Gretchen is a single character herself. I thought she was great. She's definitely quirky, cuckoo. Uh, she has definite character to her where she's very odd, the oddball out in the family, the black sheep. I do feel for her because you can, I mean, as the movie goes forward, you can see that she's going through a lot of things personally, emotionally, losing her mother, having to stay with her father, uh, leaving voicemails on the mom's phone just to hear her voice and to, kind of acclimate to this new life. And you feel for her. Um, she's, when things start to get intense, you're also scared for her and you don't know what's going to happen, but she's also dealing with what's current in her life, which is dealing with her father, which I did not like. Great actor, but I did not like him as the character in this film because I would never treat my kid like that if they're going through something that's tough. I know that with multiple kids, I don't know that because I only have a single child. But with multiple kids, a good parent would love all their kids the same or pay attention just the same. And so the father really irked me. And again, I just watched this film once, and so these are my first like impressions. The father really irked me, and I wanted to like. I'm so glad there was a scene in this film where she just went bam,
Yeah.
punched him right in the nose, and I was like, yes. I stood up and clapped because that's what I wanted to do. So he fucking deserved that. I just hated the fact that there was such tension to a point he was angry instead of listening to her, because there was some fucked up shit going on in this German Alps town that was unexplainable. The who's the other character? The I don't know who he is, the doctor of the town or the mayor of the
Oh,
town.
Mr. Koenig, who basically
Yeah,
he owns the resort in the town.
that's right. And which I know they were a little bit talking about, and maybe I didn't miss it because it's first watch, but they were talking about like the parents, the father and the stepmother trying to build more to the resort. And so I wish they would have dived more into that, like what their plan was, what their blueprint would be. Maybe they didn't, I just missed it. But that would have been really interesting on what they could have added to the fucked up shit that we endured watching the film. But yeah, the stepmother, I wish we would have had a little more of her, but the little pieces we did get of her, she was very creepy. I thought she would, there was moments where I'm like, something's up with her. I don't like her. She's going to snap. She's up to something.
Yeah.
And she was completely innocent, like just trying to take care of Alma, who's suffering seizures, or so they said. And poor little Alma, she's probably what, like 7, 8 years old looking. Yeah. And she's suffering seizures and going through her own emotions of being deaf, which I'm someone that knows how to sign language. So I love when films put different aspects like that into the film. So I don't have anybody like in my family that are deaf, but I did learn it back in high school. And I actually signed for patients at my job that are deaf. So I like that relatability to the film, where I was like, oh, okay, so she's deaf, but it's very weird that she's deaf, but she could hear certain things with her cuckoo mindset, which we'll dive more into. But yeah, what did you think of all the characters of this film?
I love the Gretchen character a lot. I mean, I always enjoy watching the dynamic of a character who is suffering from multiple emotional issues and how they deal with it, and how at times she didn't know how to deal with it, where her first instinct was always to run.
Mhm.
And you mentioned before about the voicemail she was leaving, which I thought was a great twist of the movie, because
Mhm.
the whole time you hear her calling her mother never called her back, which was such, because I didn't know the mom passed away.
Me neither.
And I like how they revealed it. And the way they revealed it was when Koenig brought the box to the house. He goes, "Oh, you really need to
Yeah.
tell your father to change the address." And what's in the box ended up being the belongings of the mother, because he sold the house. And he was
Right.
like, "Well, the
Including
house."
the voice box, the voice.
Yeah, yeah. And then when she played it is when you heard all the messages being played, because she needed to basically hear her mother's voice through the answering machine. And that's how she was dealing with the trauma of losing her mom. Which, the crazy part in the film, which I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that they avoided it, because they never really showed any tension between, Gretchen and her stepmother. There was always
Right.
concern by the stepmother, but she never really showed any like ill will towards her, which I liked that in a way, that the anger
Mhm.
was more towards, the father, who's Lewis, played by Martin Sorskas. But, I like
But
that aspect of the film, though.
yeah, the little pieces we did get of the stepmother, so vague. I felt like she could have been more stronger. But the little pieces we got, she moved weird. She was very shady. She was poised. I didn't like her vibe. She was
Well,
definitely like Dr. Conj or whatever his name is.
I think it was more like, because obviously they were rich, so
Mhm.
she was basically played the role of, the rich wife who just basically is at the side of her husband.
Mhm.
That's the way I saw her. I mean, I did want more of her. Then later on in the film, when you see what happens to her, the things she goes through, you're like, oh. And then Alma was a curious girl, because there were times where Gretchen would show like compassion for her, love for her, but then Alma would basically retaliate a little bit. Like there was one scene, which, matter of fact, we'll talk about it later because it kind of adds to the twist. But like there was times where you didn't know where Alma stood at. either because while she admired Gretchen, she kind of showed some like animosity at times towards her, but you'll later find out why. But yeah, I mean, I like the family dynamic because usually in a film, the father is more portrayed as the docile one, and usually the stepmother is the more aggressive one, and they kind of flipped it a little bit.
They did.
And there was one scene in particular that really showed it was when now Gretchen went through hell in this movie. I think she went through hell in this movie. But
100%.
after suffering a concussion, they're at the hospital, and this is where they diagnosed Alma with a tumor. And then they were saying, "Oh, we don't know where the what triggered it, what happened, this and that. Is there any situation that added tension to the house, like stress?" And what's the first thing the dad looks at? He looks at Gretchen, while the stepmother is not even. She looked at Gretchen with compassion.
Right.
So I think I like the character dynamic of this, but speaking
And
of
that was
character,
also the scene where the father snaps at Gretchen. And
yeah.
I'm just so glad she punched him because I wanted to punch him every time I saw him.
Well, the ironic thing is he's staying at the hospital with Alma.
Hmm.
Then literally the next night, Gretchen gets into a car accident, and she's at the hospital. So he's staying with both of them in the same room at time. So
Right.
I mean, I do feel like he had some serious stress with the thing too. So I'm not giving him a pass with his behavior because I feel like he's one of these fathers who thinks money could buy happiness.
Hmm.
Because he sold that. I mean, granted, to his credit, he sold a house and then put all the money into her account and just told her so you don't have to work ever again. Which,
Right.
but this is where
He loves her, but he is
oh
a fucked up way of showing it.
yeah, I don't think he because the fact that he moved on, I feel, and
Mhm.
eventually when she came around, I mean, we don't get too much of the backstory about what happened between the parents.
The ex-wife, yeah.
We get no backstory, and I think every time the mother's anything with the mother came around is where he showed the cold side to him, like he like I moved on, and maybe you should move on too. But we didn't know that she passed away, which I think if we would have known earlier, maybe we would view them a little differently. But
Yeah.
he's there for a reason. And I'm sorry, one of the creepiest characters I've ever seen in a film is definitely the resort owner. And I think it was called Bird's Nest, the name of the resort. And
Mhm.
because I think one of the places where people still was a lover's nest. So yeah, all these different names for the little what was it like little houses they sit in. But Dan Stevens' portrayal of Mr. Koenig was freaking creepy as shit. So I gotta ask you, like, what did you think of Mr. Koenig and how his behavior and actions kind of started revealing the twist of the film?
Well, you say Koenig, and I keep saying Conj. It's a German name, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but Koenig, I like him from a horror creepy aspect, but in the beginning, like I wasn't sure which way he was gonna go because in the beginning, the way he was touching Gretchen, I thought it was gonna become like some sexual behavior type, and I was like, oh hell no. But then he was really just this crazy scientist dude trying to basically using his talent as lab rats. And so I liked that of him. I like that he was a good villain of the film. Very creepy in the way he moves, very shady guy. The aspects of the experiment he was doing on because I did not see that coming. I know we're waiting. The next question is about twists, but
I
like
mean, go right
I'm gonna
in.
touch on it. Yeah, I'm gonna touch on this one because I did not see the aspect of impregnating women in a different way was the twist, and I was like, "What the fuck?" This movie and like the title of the film is Cuckoo, and this whole film. I said movie and film at the same time. This whole film is just like you're right when you said I had a total other mindset going into it, and the title Cuckoo is basically the entire town because there's the lover's nest the bird's nest, and it's the resort of the
Yeah.
town. But has, and I guess in some way when they were doing the little flashbacks or the repetitive, there's another word for it, but the there was moments in the film where there was repetitive
It was like deja vu,
scenes.
deja vu every
Yeah,
time.
yeah, moments of deja vu, and it kept repeating and repeating. I think a little bit overdone, just a little by a hair, but it made you feel cuckoo and it went crazy. And um, you mentioned villains or monsters. Like I really did like the hooded lady
Oh yeah,
chasing her. She was very awesome, and you just didn't know her story. A part of me thought, because of the way she was built, her body and everything, I thought it was the stepmother disguised
mm.
underneath all of that, but it wasn't. It was just the way she moved in certain scenes was very familiar to the hooded lady. So I was like, I didn't know which way this film was going. So when I saw at the end that the stepmother is completely innocent, I was like, you're right. It's usually a stepmother that goes nuts
Yeah.
on not their own children, and it's the father, her own flesh and blood, just completely asshole. Yeah. But back to Conch, or however you say his name. He's just, there's a scene where they're in like some weird, like I think he took him to the main resort or something, and it was that scene where he locks Gretchen
Oh,
up in like this pool area with the bed, and then the lady that escaped in the very beginning of the film, which I'll come back around that, but she ends up coming into scene, and I thought like all hell was going to break loose, and it did a little bit. But there was a moment that he was watching these two, and there's so much to say on Conj, however you say his name, but there was a moment between Gretchen and this lady that took off in the beginning of the film, um, where you almost felt like she was becoming almost humanesque in the moment. But I thought that scene was cool. Anyways, back to the doctor guy. It's just the way he was experimenting on women, really, in the town. Because you get scenes of him like, I love the fact that he would call and don't go after dark. You best
yeah.
go home. And so I loved moments like that. Like, and you were a little confused at times. Where like, is he good or bad? I don't get it. But you could tell near the end he was definitely a villain of the film. But I like that he was kind of protective, kind of creepily protective of Gretchen. He just he's just creepy. He's just weird. I just got the vibes the second he starts speaking, like helping them and bring in the bags. This is the German Alps. Welcome, blah blah blah. It was just the way he moved. He kind of moved like the stepmother. So I thought they were some kind of like in cohorts with each other a little bit. But the film makes you feel cuckoo yourself watching it. And I'm like, you just don't expect like the aspects that it does lure you into. You don't expect the twists and turns that it takes you through. And yeah, I love it.
It was like his character I liked a lot because it was very.
Mhm.
There's only certain scenes where you saw him lose his cool and temper, but he
Mhm.
was very controlled. When we first see him, the minute he shows up, he starts talking. I was like, "Yo, this dude's just something's wrong with this guy." But he did have this overprotection of Gretchen, where he got her the job. He basically got her the job before she even got there.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you understood why in a way because Lewis had the money, so he was hoping he would add more to the resort, and then you later on know, which the only thing I didn't understand too much, and it kind of, I think it left the movie with a small plot hole, is whether Lewis was aware of what was going on at all,
Right.
because Harry, who his wife we find out is basically the one that's running around. He mentions to Gretchen at one point near the end of the film is don't trust nobody, don't trust them. We don't know if we could trust them. But then you see what they did with the stepmother, but it's the reaction of Lewis still was kind of weird to me with that whole
Wait,
situation.
you said the wife, his the dad's wife is running around?
No, Harry was the guy who was the ex cop,
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
that was his wife.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Okay, I was thinking the dad.
No, that
We
was
got to
his
talk
wife.
about the cop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like, when you start getting more of Dr. Koenig, his behavior, his reaction towards Gretchen, warning her not to be out. You wonder why. Then eventually, like you mentioned, the woman in the hood, which I love the fact that she wore this hood and then some sunglasses and you saw the red eyes. And
Yeah.
I thought that was freaking awesome. Now, Lexi was mentioning about the experiment. We find out that Dr. Koenig is basically, well, Mr. Koenig, he liked to be called. He was a preservationist, and he found a way to basically breed this species, this ancient species that he was trying to get the perfect offspring. Now, I like the fact that this is where the title of the film throws you off completely because when you first think of this title, you think, I don't know, you think asylum, you think a mental hospital, you think something like that has to do with psychiatrists. What it was basically about is Mr. Koenig would talk about the cuckoo bird, how the cuckoo bird was a parasite, will actually lay its eggs in the nest of another bird and have that bird raise the kid and then come back. And
Hmm.
every time the biological mother would return, the kid will have a reaction, which is what we found out with Alma a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's what they're waiting to put together. Now, to top it off, this being would do this calling thing. And that scene where they would constantly show the
Yeah, the little throat
pulsing.
thing.
Oh god, I was like, "What the hell are you showing?" And then when you see more, like, "Oh my god, this is crazy!" And then it would do like this sound, which would make you basically feel like you're repeating your action you just did a couple seconds ago over and over and over and over again, and then it would impregnate the women, which
Mm.
is, I'll be honest, when I seen the hand come out, I was like, "What the hell is in the hand?"
Right.
Because
It's just goo. Little
yeah,
eggs
you're like, "What the
or
hell?"
ovaries.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh my god!" So that's how they're doing it. They're basically using this woman to impregnate other women, and that's what the resort was used for.
Which brings me to a question myself. Like, so the father and the stepmother, almost not even their child. It's not even their
Right,
biological child.
right. Because
It's the hooded
remember,
lady.
they were there on their honeymoon.
Hmm. That's
So
right.
yeah,
And that the cop did say, "How old is this? How old is this picture?"
yeah.
Yeah. It just hit me that they're not even the biological parents because the way
No.
they acted was like because they kept taking her to the hospital. They were concerned about seizures and they were acting as if they were
Well,
parents.
they didn't know it was not their, that they weren't really the body, because she had the kid regardless. The stepmother had
Mhm.
the kid regardless, but she was, you can say, artificially inseminated. But
Yes.
Lewis didn't know either. They took it as that was their daughter,
Right.
which
Because
is
they spent the night there.
mhm,
They were asleep because they show us a scene how they did it with the receptionist lady,
yeah,
Patrice.
yeah,
I'm surprised I even remembered that name. Patrice and the cop guy. So that's how they did it.
hmm,
So were they asleep? How did the father not even see it? But it brings it back to the whole um, repetitive, the little loop
emotion.
that they were doing. Yeah, it's crazy. This
Which,
film's
I
cuckoo.
mean, let's talk about that though. I mean, what did you think of that whole twist though? I mean, obviously neither one of us has seen it coming because this is not what we
Mm-mm.
expected this movie. But do you feel like this twist made this movie like a little bit like unique in the way, one, the way it was developed, and then how the twist slowly
Mm.
started coming? I mean, what do you think about that at all?
It was definitely very unique. The way they impregnate women was fucking weird. um, I don't want to even know where they're grabbing from, but I am assuming we all know, and that's just gross. And I kind of want to think of, I think of Joe because like yeah, he's if you know Joe, go watch his Teeth. What movies
Movies
that
that
fuck
fuck
him
me
up?
up.
Yeah, so for him to see this film, I would love to see his reaction, especially with movies that fuck me up. His review on Teeth, but yeah, um, that whole theory of impregnating and laying eggs in other women. It's not even the natural way. It's just
Yeah.
laying eggs like we're not mammals, you know? And it's just gross. And I do like the way that they made these characters look, where their eyes, they're all fucked up,
Yeah.
red. One of the girls, the one with the very long red hair, she had like two pupils or something,
Yeah,
or it
they
was
were
maybe like,
blue. Yeah.
yeah. And like, and I'm kind of curious on like medically how they do it, because a lot of them, one of the girl with the long hair, that was a wig, and she
Yeah.
switched to blonde hair at the end.
Yeah.
So why did they lose hair? So there's so many questions, but yeah, the twists are so goddamn fucked up. I really thought the father and the stepmother had way more to do with it, and they had no idea.
No.
They had no idea. And it makes it look like Gretchen's fucking nuts, and she's just an rebellious adolescent, and she's not. she's revealing the truth of this town, and I'm so glad that uh, the Mr. whatever his
Koenig.
name is,
Koenig.
Koenig, Mr. Koenig, he got shot by the cop. Now let's talk about the cop for a second, because he was a really good character in this film. I like the fact that he believed Gretchen, because he was trying to catch the hooded lady who was involved in many murders. Did not know he was an off-duty cop or whatever they said, or he was like
He was
relieved.
recently fired. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was just basically going rogue. And the ending scene where Koenig and the cop guy have guns drawn, not only to each other, but at Alma.
Yeah.
And that whole scene was awesome, the whole running through the hospital scene. But I did think that the cop killed him at first, and I was like, oh, that's too soon. So I'm glad that it was just a, shoulder swipe. He kind of missed that shot. But I'm so glad he came back into scene, and he just fucking lost his marbles. The cop lost his marbles, but I like that even though they were pointing the gun, he was still very protective of Gretchen.
Yeah.
I really like the cop. I love that he was on her side. He was walking her through. He saved her from the car accident, which was awesome. Um, I don't think she's an important character, but the little girlfriend that she had, a moment with, not very important. But I thought she died, because you see the hooded lady pick her up. Anyway, there's so much goodness to this film. Yeah.
No, the whole twist. I mean, and I like the the twist with the mom was later on in the film. It wasn't immediately in the film. It was later on in the film. The girlfriend, well, eventually she ends up taking her in at the end of the film. But yeah, like her moments were small, but I felt like her moments were so important in the film. And I got to say that car accident scene where she's hanging upside down and there's blood coming out of her mouth and goes right into her eye.
Oh,
I mean, this movie was filmed very well, and the blood scenes were so good. Like when she goes to the police precinct and she hits her head and immediately starts freaking bleeding, and then they
yeah.
do a shitty job stapling her to cut open.
They did.
I'm like, this poor girl can't even get staples, done properly, and then she had a broken arm because of the accident. But yeah, that whole twist was amazing. I love when they showed that the other lady with the different eye colors, like the bird eye colors. That was very well done. And it's like I feel like this I would say this film is very original as far as what they did. Because I would have never expected a film like this at all.
No, not
And
at all.
the twists were good. The hooded lady, when she would start screaming and opening her mouth wider, awesome. And then when
Yeah,
freaking
I'm glad we finally got to see her face from the
oh,
hood, from the glasses. She was beautiful, actually.
no, yeah,
She was
she
very
was.
beautiful.
She was. And then when freaking Gretchen got her in the throat, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
another cool scene.
Gretchen's a little badass.
Oh, she's a great. I thought great performance on her part. Great performance as far as all the characters in this film.
She only had one arm half the movie.
Yeah, and then she's trying to do sign language with that one arm after a while, because she kind of lost
Yeah.
hope for a little bit because
Hmm.
it's revealed that Alma is the next of the offspring, and
Hmm.
the Koenig believes she's like the one that they've been waiting for
Hmm.
to be really strong because I think she was a little bit more advanced for her age, and I think that's why they were doing the more experiments on her to try to like, all right, let's get rid of the stepmother, get her out of the equation. Remember what was it the lady who ran the hospital? She's not going to remember you by the morning. So they already were planning on basically taking this girl away. But yeah, I mean, this film. Yeah, let's rate this film. Any last thoughts on what do you give this movie as far as rating?
As a first watch, I definitely give it a good 4 because there was so much goodness to it. I do feel like I need to go back and just like catch things I didn't catch the first time. But I the opening scene where they get to the town, she gets the job, and then there's like the lady throwing up. She comes in again. Here's another lady throwing up, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on in this town? And the doctor was already creepy, or the main guy,
Yeah.
Koenig. He's it's such a great film. There's so many. There are a little bit of potholes here and there, but overall, it blends well together. It works. A little overdone on the looping
Yeah.
of because I get it, but it was like went on for like 3 minutes, but it works. I definitely wanted more from the stepmother.
Mhm.
Uh, I thought she was interesting. I thought she was a villain, but she wasn't. The whole movie's good, but it's definitely not what I thought. Like you said, you see the word cuckoo, you're thinking, like you said, an asylum or someone's lost their goddamn marbles. It's a psychological thriller, which it is,
Yeah.
um, but not the way I thought it would be. And it was definitely interesting. I definitely want Joe to see this because I need to see his reaction on the way they impregnate women. It's definitely way different than teeth. It's
Oh,
fucked
yeah.
up, but yeah, great film.
For me, yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4 as well. I want to give it more, but I do feel like I need to have another watch of this film. I love the characters, very well done. Koenig he was such a great villain in this film because he
Mhm.
played both sides. He played the compassionate person when he had to, and he went full villain when he needed to. I mean, think about it. He went to the hospital and basically killed the people who worked for him. Goes and starts
Yeah,
burning all their paperwork because he found out they were doing recordings and they were documenting
right.
things that he didn't want documented. Basically, had the police force working for him, and when the first one gets shot, you hear the Harry shoot the first one. Going sitting there,
Mhm.
"Oh, I told him not in the house." I mean, that's freaking. He was like so
Right.
calm, cool, and collected, until the end of the movie. But I do like the whole twist of the fact that this is based on the cuckoo bird, but they've made it into an ancient creature that he's trying to breed and develop into the perfect species, I guess. But there's also one scene that we didn't talk about that I thought was so beautiful in this film. Was when Gretchen's listening to the messages, and the last message was Alma saying, "You should come visit because my sister misses you. She's hurting, something around, and said she loves you. You should come visit us."
Yeah.
And Alma didn't know, which kind of makes the father seem like more of an asshole. He
Yeah.
didn't know that basically Gretchen's, it would be her. Would it be her stepmom too? No, it wouldn't be her stepmom. What would they? Well, anyway,
Who's the
but
baby mama of Alma?
yeah, yeah. So I thought that was another good, well placed, twist moment in this film. And like I said, the special effects in this film are good. The When she was started the scream, the way the mouth will open was a very good CGI. How they
Yeah.
pulled that off. The
It
eyes,
was very light. It wasn't too much. It was very
yeah,
light,
they
very
didn't go over.
subtle.
Yeah, they didn't go overboard with it, which was awesome. Which
Yeah.
I was kind of afraid they were at first, but they didn't. Even her movements, like some of the creepy effects of how she would move when she was like stalking her. Not for nothing. If you're riding a bike and there's a woman in like a coat chasing you. I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
going
that
down that
shadow
road.
part was creepy.
I'm not going down that road ever again. But yeah, this movie's definitely a four. It's currently streaming on Hulu. Definitely watch it. We're both curious to see what you think of this film, and the fact that the name was another twist of this film,
Yeah.
because it totally threw me off, and I'm like, this is not what I expected in this film. But
Right.
that's why 2024 has some very great story driven horror films. If you
Yeah,
don't
they do.
believe me, the film that ended 2024 was Nosferatu, which was a slow burn, story driven horror film.
Hmm.
So we have one more episode left of season two. What's your story? Yes, we're coming back for season three. Still a lot of films that we didn't get a chance to talk about. We're not going to tell you what we're going to talk about in the next episode because we don't know yet. Because we're going to dive into 2024 a little bit more and I'll just pick one out of a hat, I guess, to see which one we do. Because there's a lot of films that should be talked about from 2024 that did not get the big marketing, the big look at what we have here. Because most of those movies
Right.
always suck. In a way,
If
just
you have a 2024 film that you think is story driven, put it in the comments
oh yeah,
because maybe we'll review your choice. Help us figure it out.
oh definitely. Let us know. Till next time. That is the fourth corner. Lexi, JR, what's your story? Horror Fiend TV. Like, subscribe, share, and yes, help us decide what's going to be the final film of season two that we're going to talk about. We'll make it your call. So let us know. Till next time, peace.